everybody. Welcome to another episode of Keto Chat. I am your host, Carole Freeman, certified nutritionist, and now humorist and certified clinical hypnotherapist as well. Excuse me. And today I'm so thrilled to be bringing you with her really cool background, Vivica Menegaz. Did I say it right? Oh my gosh, we met on the low carb cruise a couple of weeks ago, actually, so 2018. So let me just give you a quick little introduction. Vivica is a certified technician in whole nutrition with 4 years of clinical practice. Originally from Italy, she grew up in a family of restaurants, learned to cook from professional chefs, and soon discovered her passion for food. After moving to the US, she had a successful career as a food photographer. Oh, cool. And then decided to study nutrition, her true vocation. And last year she opened her own web-based practice, specializes in ketogenic or therapeutic ketogenic diets. And she's a creator of the Healing Foods Method, a 14-week course to transform health and lifestyle, focusing on metabolism and endocrine rebalance. You may know her, as I originally did, from her blog, The Nourished Caveman. So we're going to talk all about how that came to be with delicious keto and paleo recipes. So welcome, Vivica, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I know that at the end of my talk on the cruise, we were talking about doing the Vivica and Carole, or Carole and Vivica comedy show.
Yeah, oh my gosh, because you had some tech challenges with your presentation. You were one of the speakers at the conference, and your presentation didn't play nice with the computer that they had you working with. So you did an amazing job at working with the challenges you had with the tech there. So, yeah.
I felt like mine became the involuntary comedy show. Like the slides were just like, phew, phew, and Jimmy like frantically pushing buttons trying to stop them.
Yep, you were doing the improv show for surprise. It's a nutrition humor program.
Well, it was the last day. I think everybody was pretty tired, so and maybe it was a little comic relief helped.
Yes, yeah. Well, to start out with, I was just sharing with you that how after hanging out with you for a week on the cruise, like the light bulb went off for me that like, oh, you were that same person. So I've been on keto diet for 3 years now. And I remember, the little blonde girl on Nourished Caveman website, and I like clicked in my brain. I was like, oh, she's that same person. Like, that's who she is.
Not a blonde anymore, as you
can see. Yeah. So I would love to hear like the story of how that whole blog came to be. Like, how did you, transition from, photographer into starting your blog?
Well, there's actually a few things happen in between, but I went from my career in photography, took a few years of hiatus where like I traveled a lot. I lived in Brazil, I got married, and then I moved back to the States full time. And I moved away from Los Angeles and I moved to Northern California. And thanks to a friend who was a doctor of chiropractic. And she basically was like trying to really hard convince me to study nutrition because she wanted me to work with her. And, I was kind of like in a place in my life where like what I was doing, I didn't want to do photography anymore. And, I was looking for something else. And so I was a bit reticent. And then I was like, okay, let's see if I can study nutrition. So I started a course in nutrition and started working for her practice. And that was really what she wanted me for, because she was starting to move her practice from chiropractic to nutrition practice, and she needed help with that. So I became a patient advocate. And that was like my first nutrition job. I was counseling patients on detoxes and diet changes. And the reason why I started a blog is because everybody would always ask me, what do we eat? What do we eat? And I didn't have books at that time. Like I didn't have meal plans because we were doing more like a Western price, nutrient dense diet, not GAPS, but more like the original teachings of Dr. Price about nutrient dense foods, and started going into paleo. So that was how this funny name of my blog came about that nobody gets. And it's like the nutrient dense foods of Western price combined with the caveman like ancestral diet of paleo. And like, so it's an ancestral diet with nutrient dense foods. And so I called it the Nourished Caveman because back in the days, about 7 years ago, there was this big controversy between the Western price people and the paleo people. You remember, butting heads and, you know,
right?
And I was like, why do that? The two worlds can totally integrate into a beautiful concept. And so that's what my blog was going to be. But yeah, that didn't last long because I was only paleo for about a year. And then when I discovered that I was pre-diabetic and I wasn't as healthy as I thought, I was like, oh, paleo is not working so good. Yeah, I was eating fruit all the time and baking lots of stuff, lots of honey. We lived, you know, apiaries and whatnot. We had tons of local honey and, you know, local fruit trees, and didn't work so good for me. So
oh, that's really fascinating. I didn't know that part of your backstory, that that you were eating paleo and you were pre-diabetic. Did you have you know, a family history? Do you have a past history of being overweight, or?
no, actually, I was pretty skinny all my life. I never had a weight problem, but it's funny enough, you know, like it really tells you how under the surface of our bodies, so many different scenarios, because I do have a family history of diabetes on my maternal grandfather's side. So I didn't even connect it. And I didn't even think it was possible for some reason. But then one day I checked my blood sugars and I started tracking blood sugars and I was like, whoa, what is going on? And I had gone from like my usually like 124 pounds, 127 pounds, you know, of weight. So being relatively thin to just started gaining weight. And then, you know, of course, everybody tells you you're getting older, you know, you're going to gain weight. It's normal. And I was just getting bigger and bigger, but more than even just the weight was like the inflammation and like joint pain. My back was going out all the time. I had migraines still, even though, you know, I was doing nutrition and like did detox and detox and detox. My digestive system was way better, but the hormones were still not there. And getting all these little hormonal things developing, you know, as you enter perimenopause. And I didn't at that time really understand how like the whole endocrine system is connected, which, you know, it's kind of my thing that I do now. So it really, I don't know, it was a big slap in the face. And that's when I found keto. And I was like, paleo is not working for me just by itself. So I had to add keto on top of what I was doing. So it became what I call keto paleo right now, because, you know, it had to be the kind of keto that I believed in. And, you know, there are 50 million versions of keto. We all do kind of our own thing that works for us, but that is what worked for me until now, at least.
Okay. Well, so let's pause right there and just kind of clarify for people, because a lot of people ask me that. In fact, just last night, somebody says, well, what's the difference between paleo and keto? And I know, but I want to hear your, this is your interview. So let's let you answer that. What's the difference between keto and paleo?
Well, actually, that's a good question. And I find it very simple to answer. Like for me, paleo means unprocessed foods and eating as close as possible, which is, it's not possible, of course, but, you know, eating close to what our ancestral diet would be. And that also means eliminating dairy for the most part. I do ghee still and sometimes butter. So I'm not like one of the purists of paleo, you know, and like, I do use certain things that come in a box. I try to use as little as possible, but like, you know, I'll have collagen powder or I'll have my morning tea. Sometimes I use Ticino as a morning tea. Those things maybe will not be 100% purist paleo, but I also try to eat, you know, as clean as possible from the farmer's market, all grass-fed, grass-finished. And, you know, for me, that's the paleo part. And I do not do dairy. the keto part is really only macros, is macronutrient ratios, because we can do keto eating McDonald's, and I mean, you know all about it. You know, there are so many different versions of what to eat on keto and why. But ketogenic just means restrict your carbs so you pop into ketosis and keto adapt, possibly, hopefully. And that's about it. So you can pretty much add ketogenic to any diet. You can be vegan keto. Good luck doing that, but
yeah. Oh, great. Okay, so that's an awesome explanation of that, and it's interesting how people think they're the same thing. Like, and I've had so many people say, "Well, oh, I eat paleo. I do a keto, so I'm keto," or they say, "I eat whole 30, so I follow a keto diet." It's like, oh no.
no.
Okay. Oh, okay.
A lot of people think they're doing keto, and like I get a lot of clients that come to me and they're like, I've been doing keto for 6 months, and then I look what they're eating and I'm like, that's not keto, sorry. Like, let me tell you what keto is.
Well, I love that you're sharing your story too of how, you know, you were a normal body weight but developing diabetes. And so many times, like, because I'm interviewing ladies for potential, you know, to work with me, they're talk about like, well, my husband, well, he's thin, so he can eat whatever he wants. Or my kids are thin, they can eat whatever they want. They can get away with it. And I say that for people like that and you, it's actually even harder because you have no idea what's happening inside. The people that get fat like me, we actually have an indicator on the outside that we can see and other people can see that something's not healthy inside of us. Whereas people that aren't as good at storing fat like that, they're, you know, a ticking time bomb inside and they have no idea. And a lot of times their doctor won't even check their blood sugar or A1C or things like that. And so things will be much more progressed in their disease before they even catch it or know that they have some changes they need to make. So I think it's a rare person that can eat whatever and not have any health consequences. So despite their body composition.
Yeah, I don't quite believe that either. And I think like even on the outside, it might look all good. Like if you scratch the surface, you know, and also our perception, I think that our perception of what healthy is, it's very specifically skewed in a way, because I get so many people that I interview and they're like, you know, I interview for possibly working together and they're like, I'm pretty healthy, I just want to lose weight. Yeah. And then you start asking them questions and like their periods are horrible, they're having cramps, hemorrhaging, like they're on medication, like thyroid medication and all this other stuff, maybe on a PPI, digestive stuff, but they're like, no, I'm generally healthy. And I was like, whoa, like you really get used, like things just become normal. And then once they're like, you're used to them, you kind of phase them out. This is as human. I feel like we do that a lot. And we just don't want to realize that this is not optimal health.
That is so true, right? Like it's the same thing. I talk to people too, and they're like, oh, I'm really healthy, except for, and you're right, you make this really long list of all these things that they, you know, we're just told is a normal part of getting older, right? Yeah. And, you know, like, you know, 10 years ago, my mom telling me that like, oh, just having stiff, achy joints when you wake up in the morning, just welcome to your 40s, honey. Like, that's just what happens. And then one day after being keto for several months, it's like, oh, no, wait, my joints don't have to be stiff and achy. And all these other things that we're told are just a normal part of getting older. Like you said, with the, oh, it's your middle age, you're going to gain weight. Just get used to it. Get some stretch pants, honey, right?
And by the way, I was super insulin resistant and like it took me almost 6 months to be able to like lower the insulin resistance. And one thing I get asked a lot, and I'm going to speak on this at some point in a video that I'm going to do, but like people are like, how come you can like eat keto and never get in ketosis? And you know, that's one thing about measuring ketones. And like, I can never have a high number of ketones just floating around. Even when I measure with the breath ketones, like as far as like burning and the actual activity, I am never in high ketosis. So I know that the insulin is a part and also my liver probably is a part. But it's quite interesting because I look healthy, I look fit, and still like I had super high insulin resistance. And my blood sugars took forever to like, there was a lot of other people that I started on keto as I started on keto, and they were doing great. And like their blood sugars were dropping, they were losing weight super fast. And like, to me, it took such a long time to reset that and to go back to like normal blood sugars and insulin sensitivity. I think it probably took about 2 years to heal like that insulin resistance. Even though, again, on the outside, I look normal. But on the inside, if you start measuring stuff and looking at stuff, yeah, it was a very different scenario. So I know that, and also it takes time, you know, it really takes time. Even with keto, everybody loves keto because you're like, quick results, drop the weight. It's not necessarily always like that.
Okay. So who's your, what, you know, the people you're working with? It sounds like you're primarily working with women. Like describe your ideal client.
Well, there is the ideal client, and then there is the client that kind of finds me and needs me the most.
Okay.
Sometimes it's difficult because the people that come to me usually, it seems like they've tried keto and it didn't work, and they've tried almost everything else. And they also worked with, I get a lot of patients that worked with normal doctors, then endocrinologists, then functional medicine doctor, sometimes even a nutritionist or a dietitian, which, you know, different, but definitely not a keto trained nutritionist. And they need to lose weight, they're hypothyroid, their adrenals are all over the place, their sex hormones are all over the place. And they're pretty much like, you know, they're just kind of coping, but nobody can help them get better. And so they come to me because like they find, you know, this interview or that thing or that blog post. But what I do is, I guess I have the ability to see the whole picture for them and to understand, you know, and this was kind of like my talk on the cruise, the kind of miserably failed talk.
Wow.
On the cruise was about how do we balance endocrine health, metabolism, and heal it through a therapeutic ketogenic diet. Because that's kind of the main thing that I do in my practice. Because, you know, my practice started out with like, I used to focus on like pre-diabetes because that's what I did for myself. And, you know, I knew how to do it. It was nice and effective and easy. But when I started seeing is that all these people that would come to me with like pre-diabetic numbers, they also had really screwed up hormones. And they are 99% women, yes. And so it was like, if I fix one thing, but I don't fix the other, and nothing really gets better. And, you know, I'm a bit of an obsessive person when it comes to like resolving issues. Like I don't like to do half done jobs. So, you know, I had to go and pursue it. And as always, you know, the main motivator comes from your own health history, because that was my scenario as well as a woman in perimenopause. Like my hormones started being all over the place and having all those issues. And so I kind of had to figure it out for myself. And, you know, as I am a testament to the possibility of resolving such issues, and so are a lot of my patients, I know that there is hope. And there are ways to do it. And, you know, it is possible to lose weight and like address your metabolism and preserve your hormone health or restore your hormonal health, especially thyroid, especially adrenals.
Okay. So what kind of like, what symptoms are people having that you know, like if you made a list of the top 5 things that people complain about that when they're working with you, like what are those? Like probably, like you're saying, most of them say like they just need to lose some weight and they think they're healthy, right? Or what are the other things that are?
See, because the weight is mostly kind of sadly, but you know, it's a motivator, because like we deal with that on the outside. We look in the mirror every day. We don't fit in the clothes we want to fit in. So like when there is excess weight and we can't lose weight, then that's the big motivator. Like I need to lose weight. And then, but the symptoms, like a lot of the symptoms are like exhaustion. that either you wake up in the morning and you just don't want to get out of bed, need coffee in order to function. That's a big one. And then the 3 p.m. crash, when like people just like cannot function anymore. Also, like brain power is a big thing, because like a lot of people complain of like fuzzy brain, foggy brain when you have to work. And like I'm a business owner. If my brain doesn't work, my shit goes down. And I know a lot of women these days that are more career oriented and like they have high demand jobs, or just keeping track of a whole family. And like, if you have kids, many kids, and then you have a job, and like keeping track of everything, it's very demanding. So big symptom is like brain fog and fuzzy thinking. And then there is like, constipation, and is another big one that comes. And of course, like periods, like totally bad periods, like cramps, like in, how do you say, inhabilitating English, debilitating periods.
Okay.
So when you're like in bed for 2 days and have to take painkillers, or, massive doses of like Advil and ibuprofen, and just hemorrhaging the whole time.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are all kind of symptoms that seem like random, but they're all connected to the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So can you kind of give us a sneak peek overview of what your healing foods method is? I know it's top secret and people have to go to get it, but can you kind of...
No, it's not very top secret, but it's kind of based on, the program is based on the foundations of nutrition. So, for me, in order for a person to lose weight, like I am very clear with clients, and like, I'm not a weight loss person. I want to get you healthy. So if you want to lose weight without being healthy, you can go get a lap band or use like pharmaceutical speed. I don't do those things.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty brutal with them, but like, if somebody wants to work with me, they need to get in that frame of mind that the body needs to be healthy first. And so in order to get a person to start being healthier and healthier, the first thing we need to examine is like toxicity in the body. So like I am very thorough in like history and trying to address all those different possibilities of where the root causes of the problem come from, where are they? And then we go dig, we really go kind of gardening for root causes. And, I do a very slow and steady detox, starting with a liver detox and then going into cellular detox. There are a lot of elements that are not commonly considered, like, aside from the heavy metal toxicity, that's pretty standard knowledge. But nowadays there is like a lot more awareness of, like, for example, viruses and bacterial infections that are chronic and low grade, and they affect your glands and organs. So for example, there has been a lot of connection with like EBV virus and the thyroid. And how do you clean that up? Is that even possible? I do that in my practice. So I definitely go into, after liver detoxes, I go into cellular detoxes. Throughout this process, I also do a very solid keto adaptation. I think there are amazing benefits in being keto adapted. Not a lot of people get properly keto adapted. So it's very important also to follow the steps and make sure that your body has the right conditions to keto adapt. It's harder than you think. Like people like they just randomly do keto, especially women. And don't forget, my target, like my client, is always women, and usually like over 40 years of age. And that's when the hormone come in and really make it harder to do all this kind of work, that if you are a 20-year-old bodybuilder male, it's so much easier. Even a 30-year-old male, even a 40-year-old male, because the hormonal picture is different. And so we go through all these steps in the program. And then there is, of course, a very big focus on gut healing. So, detoxification, and then we look at the gut. We start looking at stress and the influence of stress on the body, all the different factors. and diet and lifestyle, of course, and kind of bring it all together and make sense of it all together. But the big focus is for me on endocrine rebalancing, because that's where, it's also my field of expertise.
Oh, okay. Love for the endocrines. That was my big challenge after that car accident. Everything just went haywire. All my endocrine glands just were not working right. So, oh gosh. Okay. So let's talk more about the blog. You were sharing with me about how, the challenge now is you're known for this Nourished Caveman a blog. And it was funny because I always thought, like, so why is this cute young girl like having a caveman website? Like, she's a cave woman, right? So now I know the behind the scenes story of where the name of that came from. So what?
That's Italian. So I guess that was like, I should have said something with woman, but I wanted to keep it general at that point because I wanted to include everybody, and that's what it came out like. Me and English.
Oh no, I mean, it's great. I mean, it totally fits with what the goal of it was, or the aim of it, right? So I didn't ever, like, I've done probably every dietary approach out there, but I never actually was like paleo, right? So I skipped over that one. I went from I don't, like, before I did keto, I was doing like, whole foods, all foods fit type of 80-20 rule, like focusing on mostly real whole foods, but not restricting anything, right? And so I never jumped on the paleo bandwagon, right? So now I totally understand where the name comes from. And in my schooling as well, like, we had a big emphasis on Weston Price's teachings, right? So the nourished part of it totally makes sense, because that's a big word that they use in that. And I'm very familiar with how the two, the fighting about, we're right, no, we're right. And it's like, no, let's just take the best of all of it and combine it together too. So, all right. So anyway, so how do you, what's the future of your blog? Do you see yourself renaming it, or are you just keeping rolling with it, or?
So yeah, this is a big conundrum right now, and I'm actually been in this process of like where to go with the blog. It's been a big question for me, because I know that it doesn't reflect my identity or what I do completely anymore, but it still reflects the way I eat and the way I want most of my patients to eat. So it will always be there for that. And then, I have been in meetings with my team in the last few days, like trying to see, like, create a new concept that reflects what I do better, and like, where are we going from now? And like, I'm about to do an interview series as well. I've been doing interviews for a few years with experts on the blog, but I kind of, oh, hi, Kitty.
Oh,
yeah, Kitty too. Mine usually scratches at the door when I'm doing interviews and drives me crazy.
Oh man, I have three. I'd never get any peace if I shut the door.
I know, I have to, because it's loud out there, but
this is my co-host here, Penelope.
Yay. She's cute.
She's very grumpy. Yeah.
Oh.
But she also has to be next to me all the time. So
nice.
There's usually another one under the desk too. So
nice. Yeah, I'm surprised Gato is not here. I managed to lock him out. But anyway, so there is going to be a certain like expansion of identity going on, and like I'm really excited. We have some concept floating in our head, but it's definitely going to be something that reflects better, like, of course, the ketogenic aspect, because for me, again, it's foundational. I've been keto myself for about 4 years. And, when I first started keto, there was not a lot of people that were really talking about it. And now the beauty is that it's really exploded. It's going more mainstream. There is so much more research and experiments and people doing all kinds of versions of keto. And, so like, it's really great. Although, on the other hand, I also see a lot of really bad keto being done. So,
yeah, what do you mean by that? what do you see? Yeah, tell me more about that.
I don't know how it is in your experience, but I always, like I just say, I always come from the foundation of like health. Like, you know, being a nutritionist, like for me, health is the number one important thing. And even though I think the ketogenic has immense value, it is not an excuse to cut corners. And I see how a lot of people want to just use a ketogenic diet to cut corners and not do the proper work to get healthy. They just want to drop weight fast or get cut fast, or, you know, and so they will just eat whatever. And I don't endorse that at all. Like there is the famous cherry turnover carb up thing that, you know, there is different circles of doing keto, and one is like bodybuilders or people that are, you know, lifting, heavy lifting, and they will be strict keto a week, and then they'll do the carb ups before lifting, and they'll do the carb ups with like cherry turnovers. See, that is a very different worldview for where I am, because I believe in like a sustainably healthy, consistent diet every day. Carb ups or not, keto or not. And then that's the foundation that we build upon. So to really get 100% of the benefits of a ketogenic diet, I think it has to be done with the right foods that are nourishing and, you know, ancestral. Like eat following kind of your DNA, eat following your evolution. And I'm also not a super big fan of like the last short 8,000 years of agriculture and how that has changed the human experience in so many different levels. You know, and we're not just talking dietary, but also cognitive and socially, like all these different things that came through agriculture. And then the latest developments of agriculture with GMO and, you know, pesticides, herbicides, you know, the Monsanto thing. There are a lot of implications. And, you know, if I call myself a holistic practitioner, I need to be able to look at all the implications that are part of the pictures of your health.
Nice. Well, awesome. Okay, so I want to ask then too, so women, so there are women that need this healing that are normal body weight, right? And that's not typically who I work with. I work with women that have, you know, typically like, you know, 20, 50, 100 pounds to lose or more. And so what in your work do you see, you know, the people or women, especially if they're of a normal body weight or, you know, normal BMI, they need a different approach with keto, right? Because they're going to have to be, their body, if they go too low calorie, their hormones aren't going to be very happy at all, right? So what do you see that needs to be different for women that are, you know, trying to rebalance hormones, trying to get the benefits of a ketogenic diet, but they're a normal body weight? What's different about that approach?
I think that there is like, it's kind of fortunate in a way when you do work with somebody who has a normal body weight, because a lot of the people that come there are like your clients that need to lose a large, especially amount of weight, like 20, 30, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds. They are metabolically damaged. And so they have this like history of really bad diets. And, you know, I'm sure you see it every day, like low fat, super extreme calorie restriction, up and down, you know, sometimes it's like eating disorders, like binging and then like, you know, fasting, purging. So there is all this like metabolic damage where like your metabolic rates are super low and like you're not able to burn any calories for energy. So there is all that part that needs to be resolved. But when you have somebody who doesn't need to lose weight, then you can kind of like skip ahead a bit and get to like the real healing.
Okay.
So I don't wait, like we don't need to focus on all that, like how do we heal the metabolism, you know, like we need to start trying to be able to incorporate more calories and more movement and like raise your metabolic rate and all those things that we would do for weight loss. But instead we can go straight into like, okay, we're going to get you super clean, like really clean. And that sometimes is a big process in itself. I have several patients who are younger in their early 30s and normal weight but have crazy hormonal dysfunctions due to like major like heavy metal toxicity. And you know, when the heavy metals are there, your gut is always really compromised. So then we need to focus on that gut healing, and that takes months. So we need to first clean up the heavy metals, then focus on the gut. So the work is kind of deeper. And then this same scenario can very well happen in people that need to lose weight. But there is that little benefit that when you're not overweight, then we can just like really focus on healing.
Do you have to do, you know, special strategies to make sure they're eating enough food? Because I know for most people, when they get into a ketogenic diet, their appetite goes way down or goes away. And for women, especially that don't need to lose weight, how do you navigate that?
Well, I think that when, like, I use macros as a tool when we begin working together, and like I keep a very close eye both on their macros and on what they eat, the actual quality of the foods. But when there is no weight loss needed, then we can transition faster into a more intuitive eating. And like, you know, I've honestly had only one patient so far that was having issues with losing too much weight.
Okay.
But you know, I find personally that it's very easy to maintain or gain weight on keto because you can eat fat, and fat is super calorie dense. And so all you have to do is up your fat intake, which is not that hard. I mean, we know that there are lots of really delicious ways to eat fat. And, you know, so I think it's actually almost easier to gain weight on keto than lose it.
Okay. To get to indulge in all those delicious recipes and desserts on your blog, right? And in your cookbooks.
Yeah, I'm not a huge dessert fan, actually. I am a savory person, and because of the insulin issues, like I also prefer that like my clients, you know, there are a lot of people that do like sweet fat bombs, keto desserts, you know, and they're specialized in all these amazing indulgent delicious keto desserts. Like I have a very controversial relationship with the sweet flavor. I think that we are not designed to have too much sweet flavor. And see, I'm European as well, and in America there is a very different mentality and a very different, like, I would almost call it imprinting. You know, Americans are almost like imprinted on sugar.
Yes.
Conditioned on sugar. So, and you know, I'm from a generation that I grew up on just like, I grew up on liver and fried brains, you know, and we had like, I remember the only treat that we ever had was when I was in boarding school and with the nuns in Catholic school in Italy. We had those little tiny rolls of licorice that were like a spiral. Did you have them here, like the wheels, licorice?
Oh, I think I've seen them, but it wasn't very common, like especially as children. Children really didn't like licorice, but
right, that's the only thing I've ever got. I never got candy. I never got candy bars. When I was a little older, we started having like Mound bars that we call Bounty. And in fact, that was like, I think my first keto dessert I did for the blog.
oh,
I loved it so much. And like, I wanted to recreate it, you know, chocolate and coconut.
yeah.
But I come from very, very different world where like, I was raised on just foods, like healthy staple foods. There was, you know, in Italy, actually, I remember as a little kid, when we really wanted a treat, my mom would make me a little bread, you know, a panino, cut in half with a slab of butter this big on it, and sugar, a little sprinkle of sugar on top. And that was your treat.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice. No, I totally agree with you. I agree too that like Americans are imprinted on sugar. I love that. It's so true. And that's, you know, one of the approaches I have is that we need to move away from those sweet tastes. And that's one of the keys to helping people lose weight and keep it off, is to move away from the like need something sweet all the time, all day long. And you need a dessert with every meal or every day. Yeah.
Or instead of a meal, like, you know, I see that with a lot of people. And sometimes, you know, I don't get exposed maybe to too much like habits here. And I see people like, okay, I'm just gonna not eat lunch so I can eat dessert. and it's like, really? Like, I feel sick. That's what happens to my body, that if I try to eat, for example, a keto sweet instead of a meal with like meat and veggies, I feel sick and I crash anyways. Like, it will spike my blood sugar even if it's keto, and then I'll crash and like feel nauseous and bloated and awkward.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I got one more question for you here. So what are the top mistakes that you see people making when they're trying to do keto on their own? Like maybe, top 3 or 5 mistakes that you see.
Well, I think the first one is that they eat too much fat or not enough fat.
Okay.
So they don't know how to regulate the fat for their caloric needs, and also the quality of the fat they eat can be very questionable. So like, not, and I think that really comes from this whole like last 40 years of low fat, that people have lost their relationship to fat and they don't know even how to put fat in their diet. And it's like, yeah, just cook with butter or just cook with ghee, cook with coconut oil, put lots of it in it. You don't need to eat a stick of butter. You can put half a stick of butter, and saute your steak in it and then pour it on top. Like, there are ways to incorporate fat that are not artificial, or like, not having to use fat bombs and stuff like that. So I feel like there is a learning curve needs to come back about how to use fat, and also your actual need for dietary fat, especially when people are overweight. Like, we talked about it with Michelle Lundell on his presentation on the cruise, and about measuring ketone activity. And like, some people say, oh, I'm not in ketosis unless I eat MCT oil. So I have to have 2 tablespoons of MCT oil so that my ketones go up. And then I feel like I'm in ketosis. But you know what? You might not test for any extra ketones, but if you restrict the carbs, you will be in ketosis. And how you're going to lose weight if you keep adding on fat? Then you never get the chance to burn your own fat for fuel. And then we go back, cycling back to like the metabolic rate and like, how do we actually are able to burn that fat for fuel? But the idea of like, I'm just going to eat a bunch of fat and I'm going to be in ketosis, it's a very superficial kind of misconception of how the ketogenic diet works at a deeper level in the body.
Okay, so number one mistake is wrong amount of fat. Okay.
Yeah, and then the second is probably like, well, here's kind of debating between like the wrong amount of protein and the wrong foods to eat. So, I would say what foods they eat is probably number 2 mistake, because people come and they're eating cheese all day long. And heavy cream and cheese and yogurt, like, full fat yogurt, but like heavy on the dairy. And then here's a cat scratching at the door. You guys probably can hear it, luckily, but I can. So, having really dairy heavy, and like they say, well, that's what I thought I had to do to be keto. I have to eat this much dairy, otherwise I'm not keto, So that is probably the second mistake. Or like, eating poor quality fats or poor quality foods in general, or having the excuse of eating whatever as long as it's keto ratios.
Okay.
That's number 2 mistake.
Okay.
And the number 3, I think, is related to protein. And again, it's like not enough protein. Mm-hmm. And trying to, like, there has been a lot of talk very recently about protein. And I was like, that's my new hashtag, protein is the new fat. I started putting it on Instagram. I'm like, protein is the new fat. And
that was great on the cruise. Actually, we had, Dr. Ted Naiman's talk was all about protein leveraging. And then we had a protein panel the first evening as well. That was really great. I got to sit on that. And
yep.
And if people aren't following along, like Jimmy Moore and Dr. John Lemansky have a keto biohacking MD podcast they're doing, and they've been hashing out this protein thing for a while. And I've got an interview coming up with Dr. Lemansky, a little sneak. Yeah.
That's
So,
awesome. I can't miss that one. I'm gonna watch it for sure. It's pretty awesome.
yeah.
And
Anyway,
also
so like, yeah,
interesting.
protein. You're right. Is like the
Yeah,
hot topic in the keto world. So share your take on protein.
yeah, because like it was so interesting to see how Jimmy did the high protein experiment and Dr. Nemansky, and they had such different results. And like, so I suddenly have a couple of patients who are doing that. And I started doing like keto carnivore myself for the last week, 10 days. Not super strict. I'm just going to be playing with it. But I am a meat lover, and like I'm also O negative blood type. So I know that red meat just it's my friend, and that's one thing that I always try to do in my practice though, is like anchor people on protein. And the macros I've calculated for my patients have always been higher in protein, even when like 2-3 years ago, people were like, no, you gotta be 80% fat, protein is gotta be under 25%, and the carbs have to be really restricted. So, but I saw a difficulty was for a lot of people to switch into ketogenic and have such high fat, low protein, because fat does not curb hunger, especially not at the beginning. But although we talked about it, you guys talked about it in the panel, about there are some people that feel full with fat and some people that don't. Mm-hmm. In my experience, and I think that this is like probably like related to hormones and the satiety hormones and, your brain triggers, but I feel like most of my clients, they do better with protein as far as fullness factor than they do with fat. I get very little people that can just eat fat and feel satisfied. So I always tended to give higher protein than the standard keto macros and transition. And once they're keto adapted, after you reach true keto adaptation, then we can really look at what does it look like for you? What are your actual protein needs? But I always anchor down in protein for my diets. I have the famous Vivica's meatballs. And, like when, the snacks, like clients coming into keto and be like, I'm hungry. I can't, I don't know what to do. And they crash 3 p.m. And I'm like, well, guess what? Beef jerky or a meatball. I have this one recipe for Thai meatballs that is so delicious. And it's everybody's favorite in my program. And I was like, just make a batch of meatballs and take them with you and eat them when you start crashing. So it's just like red meat, in a kind of accessible, snacky way, but no snacks with fat bombs, no snack with fat, no snack with collagen or, peanut butter or nut butter, no, meat. So, they're like preaching to the choir here because I love anchoring in protein. I think protein is your friend. And maybe it's not fat, like protein is not the new fat, but I think it's very important. And, lately in some conversations with other practitioners and friends who are practitioners and do keto, I was talking about like protein is the macronutrient. Like this is what we really, really, really need. And the fat, like if we eat meat, fat is already in there. It's kind of prepackaged.
Nice.
But sorry, I have to say this. Last thing is like, with all this vegan craziness going on, and like I am an animal lover. I have always had animals. I am a big nature lover. I am a big proponent of animal rights. Yes. I think there needs to be a discrimination, like, because we cannot indiscriminately eat protein. So eating meat, even being a carnivore on a carnivore diet, especially being on a carnivore diet, does not mean that you're going to eat feedlot beef. Mm. It means being conscientious, oh gosh, English, conscientious about your choices. Thank you, Carole. Because if that is your primary source of fuel, then this is really what you put in your body. You need to be super aware of how that animal is raised and, the conditions and everything. So you need to be super aware of like making the best possible choice about your food. And yes, I deeply, firmly believe that beef is sustainable, and raising cattle can be extremely sustainable, not just sustainable, but beneficial for the planet if it's done the right way. And I studied Salatin and permaculture and, God, what's the other guy's name? I always forget it.
Peter Ballerstedt?
I'm sorry?
Peter Ballerstedt, do you know him?
I don't. Where is he? Is in the States?
Yeah, he's a researcher from Oregon, and he goes out and lectures on, he's a ruminant nutrition specialist, like he PhD in that. So
I'm going to look him up.
Yeah.
But like the Savory Institute, for example, that's another really big institution that's coming up, is about sustainable beef raising and cattle raising. There are options, and like we can't be just brainwashed, because I feel like there is a whole agenda behind this like vegan brainwashing, but that's another conversation. Yeah. We can have the Carole and Vivica comedy show about brainwashing behind vegan agendas.
We can brainwash in a good way. So.
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your protein perspective. That's great information. And you're right. People fear it way too much. I hear people pretty much every day. They're like, I think I'm eating too much protein is probably why my keto's not working. I'm like, well, you're probably not. But yeah. So, okay. So just in kind of wrapping up, was there anything else that you were hoping I would ask about, or that you want to share right now about what you're doing or passionate about?
I think we covered it pretty good. And like, yeah, this protein thing I'm pretty passionate about. And it's something that I've been wanting to talk about, because with the whole vegan, documentaries and interviews and doctors and things and people going vegan, and they're pretty belligerent about it. But I've been like, kind of like mulling over it and not really come out publicly with like my opinion. But I think it's time, and like to really express it. And I was really motivated as well by Dr. Johnny Bowden, who had this awesome talk about the vegan versus meat, and it's time to talk about it. It's really time to like look at two sides of the picture, and like not just like there are different alternatives than being vegan for sustainability and animals. Like we can't, it's not black or white, but like there are alternatives that are better for everybody, especially the planet.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Great. All right. So I just have one closing question for you. If you knew today was your last day on the planet, the meteor's coming at us, we're all going to die today, what's going to be your final meal?
Oh my goodness. This is going to be bad. Okay. You want to know my dirty secrets?
Yes, yes.
I want to die of oyster indigestion.
Oh. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's not the bad I was thinking you're going to go down. That's hilarious. Well, you're going to have to come up here. You're going to have to come up here to Washington to do that, because.
But yeah, I have cut my seafood consumption quite a bit, especially on the Pacific here after Fukushima. It's not ideal, but oh my goodness, I would love to just like eat oysters until the comet hit.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so great. Nobody's ever answered that.
Raw, not cooked, okay? No, none of that wasteful thing of cooking them.
Yeah, don't cook oysters. That's just sad.
I'm starting to drool a little bit.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Well, Vivica, thank you so much for being here today. I've loved everything you've shared and getting to know you better. And I just look forward to continuing this friendship and collaboration, and seeing you in the upcoming conferences and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much. We're going to link your blog and your cookbooks. We'll put those all down in the show notes there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you and so if people want to like follow you on social media, like what's your favorite, like where are you at on social media?
They can just Google either Vivica Menegaz, and I'm all over the place, but also they can Google the Nourished Caveman. The blog will pop up, and then I'm on everywhere: YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. No Snapchat. I'm too old for that. Sorry, guys.
Nice. All right. Yeah, we'll link all that below there. So if you guys have enjoyed this interview, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with your friends too. Sharing is caring. So, all right. So, thank you again for being here.
Carole. It was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next time.